How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We've got Bryan Alvarez, who's on the road. I'm not even sure where he is. He was in the car.
Not either, so.
He was in the car the last time I was talking to him.
Milwaukee, Oregon.
Really?
Yes.
And where are you wrestling in Milwaukee, Oregon?
Yes, the Elks Lodge here.
Oh, okay.
Tony Bourne used to run all the shows.
Okay, so anyway, Bryan's going to be here for the first hour before he's got to wrestle tonight, and we've got just a ton of subjects to talk about. Now, all the phone lines are lit, but there will be open lines as the show goes on. You can write this number down. It's 1-800-878-PLAY to join us, and you can talk about WrestleMania and all of the goings-on in pro wrestling. And, boy, last week was quite the week. We knew going in it was going to be one of the biggest weeks of the year, and it was and then some. WrestleMania was an awesome show. Bill Goldberg debuted on Monday. Kevin Nash didn't debut on Monday, but he's debuting tomorrow night on Raw. Sable was back. That was a surprise. Roddy Piper is back, which I guess Bryan halfway knew. And what else do we got going? Mirko Cro Cop.
Steve Austin's done.
Steve Austin's done. Mirko Cro Cop knocked out Bob Sapp in a minute 24.
Mm-hmm.
And did you watch the K1 pay-per-view Friday night?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, it's only for a penny, so it's not too expensive, and it's still playing tonight until maybe midnight, I'm guessing, on DirecTV. I mean, for a penny, it was a good show. For $1, it would have been, it was okay for $1 if it was that too. Anyway, I guess, Bryan, we'll start off. Quick thoughts on WrestleMania.
Well, I saw WrestleMania live, and it was a very interesting experience because the seats that I got were close as, I guess if you take all of Safeco Field, they were close, but where I was, I couldn't see the ring, so I ended up in the bar and watched the entire show on the screen. So it was just interesting to be sitting amongst the people that bought a ticket because WrestleMania was in town but weren't really huge wrestling fans, and to see things like the entire bar going insane for Hulk Hogan's match, and then the very sad fact of the entire bar, I mean, every single solitary person except me, clearing out the second the Steve Austin match ended. And it was, I mean, I loved the show, but just, watching, it was a real reality check as far as what people came to see and who they saw as stars and who they didn't, and it was interesting.
Well, one of the things is it's based on what you promote. I mean,
yep.
SmackDown promoted, nothing but Vince McMahon and Steve Austin, so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it got the biggest reaction. We'll talk a lot more about Vince McMahon and Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan, I should say. We also got a little game going today, and that is, if you can answer this question, okay, you can get, in fact, first person who answers this question correctly will get a free copy of Def Jam Vendetta featuring DMX, Ludacris, Method Man, Redman, Scarface, and many more. It's the hottest Def Jam artists in this video game doing professional wrestling with over 1,500 moves. So anyway, the question is, name, and if anyone who can't get one of these names is in trouble, and if you can get two of these names, I'm going to give you a lot of credit because this is not an easy question. In fact, it's hard as hell. Name two Olympic gold medalists in the history of the World Wrestling Federation. Okay? Bryan, do you know the other one?
I think, yeah, I do.
Yeah, because we did this a couple of years ago on the show, the same question. Anyway, that's the question. So the first person with the correct answer, call us and you'll get a copy of the game. We're going to get to calls in just a second. I'm going to talk a little bit more about WrestleMania. Bryan, what was your favorite match at WrestleMania?
The Shawn Michaels match.
Okay. That ended up winning the poll for the best match. So
I really enjoyed that match.
It was an excellent match.
I really enjoyed it because watching it, there were things that I saw that were so simple, but they were so effective.
Just what, you mean like the placement of moves?
Yeah, the placement of moves and how things were done in the psychology of the match, and just, we talk so much about how guys in WWE need to slow down and the style needs to change or guys are going to get killed, and this was like a great match to watch to learn how to do it.
Okay, and then we saw a match where guys tried to kill each other and themselves in the main event, which was Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, which I thought was an awesome match as well.
Thing with that match was I was so scared watching it that it was hard to enjoy it. I think that if I watched it now on tape, I would really like it. But just watching it at the time, every time Kurt Angle did something, I was cowering in fear. He took those overhead belly-to-bellies, and it was I don't know. It was tough to watch.
I will say this. I was watching with a bunch of people, and they were all aware of Kurt's injury, and that was the only match that anyone in the room took as real.
Yeah.
As far as not as far as winning and losing. And when Brock went up for that shooting star, it was just like, oh my God, we're going to see this once in our lifetime. And then, boy, oh boy.
I know. And the thing was, everybody in the building, it seemed just from watching it, and obviously I didn't poll everybody in the building, but it seemed that the majority of the people had no clue that Kurt was in bad shape. But
no, watching crowd reaction, I got the impression that they really didn't, because the reaction would have been totally different.
Yeah, and I'm sure 99.9% of the people had no clue that Brock was going to do a shooting star press. But when he went out to start climbing up the top rope, it was like watching King Kong climb the Empire State Building. Everybody knew that something was going to happen and that it was going to be something to see. And it was definitely something to see, but I wish he would have hit it.
Yeah, we all do. If he had hit it, it might have been match of the year, or close to it. Close to it, anyway. We would at least be talking about it as a candidate.
Yeah.
I think, if he had hit that thing. Steve Austin is done.
Looks like it.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Although, I remember...
well, you never say done in this business, but
no. I remember like 4 years ago I wrote this article about how he was done. And it turned out he wasn't done, but his family thought he was done, so... Yeah.
Steve, that brings up another thing, because it's like Kurt Angle's having surgery on Friday, and he's having basically what would be minimally invasive neck surgery, which is basically arthroscopic surgery of the neck to correct his injuries, his bone chips and that are pressed on the nerve and things like that, herniated discs. And it's very controversial because while other athletes have had it done by Dr. Joe in Pittsburgh, they've all been gymnasts except for Scott Hall, and Scott Hall's injuries were not anywhere near the level of Kurt Angle's. Nor, when Scott Hall came back, did he do anything near the level of what Kurt Angle's going to do when he comes back. And if you have any doubt that Kurt Angle's going to change his style, just watch the tape of that match from Sunday. He ain't coming back and changing his style. Or watch Chris Benoit's matches. And I hope he can hold up. This is a great, if this works, it's a great breakthrough, because, so many of these guys that have been out for a year, maybe they can get, back in 2 months, and that's a big, big difference. But, boy, if it doesn't work, it's going to speed up the end of his career. And even with Austin, the one thing is that Austin, he got a reprieve and he got a couple of extra years of his career, but, sooner or later, he went down, his career is ending, by the same basic injury.
Yeah. The way I look at it is, I talk to a lot of people that say, okay, this looks too good to be true. And I just look at it, and I'm being optimistic in that 50 years ago, everything that's being done today, back then would have looked too good to be true. So maybe this is something, and I just figure that worst case scenario, in 6 weeks after he's recovered from whatever they do, they'll know whether that was enough or not. And if all else fails, he can have Dr. Youngblood do it, and that'll be that. But, I don't see this as being something that's going to ruin him if it's not done correctly. But I'm no doctor, so I can't say for sure.
Well, time will tell. Speaking of time, Sable came back, and that was like time standing still.
Time stands still for nobody.
Time does stand still for nobody, but that's another... Yeah, Sable standing there with Tori Wilson, it wouldn't have been the way I would have introduced her. But then again, there's very little I would do the way they're doing it these days, because I would think, if I put Sable out there next to Tori Wilson, the first thing that everyone's going to do is go, man, is she old? And if we're going to bring her back, it's not what we want people to think, so we'll bring her back by herself.
Yeah.
No, we're going to bring her back, stand her next to Tori Wilson, and everyone went, man, is she old?
The thing is, I hear people saying that she looked horrible, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, hold on a minute. First off...
Okay, she didn't look horrible, but she stood next to Tori Wilson, so that's...
she was next to the wrong person.
Right.
Sable is not like an ugly person in any means, but you put her out there, and she looks like Tori's mom.
Yeah, you know what? She looks like Chandler's mom. What was that? What's the name of the You don't know this because you don't watch that show.
More out of the loop than you are.
No, the show. What's her name? Morgan Fairchild.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on the what TV commercials is she on? What's the store? You don't know that. What's the store that Morgan Fairchild does the commercials for?
I have no clue.
Oh, come on. They're all over TV. How can you not know?
I don't watch TV. Oh. I tape all the shows.
You're like Vince.
I am. I'm worse than Vince.
Do you know who won the World Series?
No.
You and Vince. You're the only two that I know that don't.
I guess the Final Four was on this weekend, and I couldn't understand why it was 6 hours long, and someone goes, well, it's...
Because it's 2 games.
Like, oh, I see.
All right. Okay, we're going to...
like 4 corners of the court or something.
Okay, we're not going to talk about anything but wrestling for at least the next 40 minutes. Let's see what else. Oh, have you seen the Mirko Cro Cop Bob Sapp match yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I have not either, but I probably will be seeing it. Hopefully I'll get the tape tomorrow. I mean, I heard enough from enough people who were there. I, got punched in the eye, and that was it. And
yeah.
1 minute and 24.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay, now let's see. The next... Okay, Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell, if that match goes through, this is your chance. Who's going to win? Chuck. I'm going to think about this one, but I'm leaning towards Chuck, too, on that one. You know what? I think
that Randy will just end up too small, and that will work against him.
And
I think Chuck is a bad, bad man now.
You know what? I also think that Chuck cutting that much weight will tire quicker, and Chuck has tired. Chuck would have beaten both Josh Barnett and Rico Rodriguez had he not tired quicker than the other guy. Randy. Yes, that's what I meant. So, yeah, I think Chuck Liddell's going to win, too.
Yeah.
All right.
And what a debacle that is. UFC cannot catch a break.
Well, this isn't like bad luck. There's a difference between like somebody getting hurt before a match like UFC would happen, or this is something different. This is Tito. I mean, it really is. I mean, I don't blame UFC for this at all, actually. I just see it's Tito Ortiz who doesn't want to fight Chuck Liddell, and after indicating that he would for a year, and this is just what happens. I mean, it is bad for you. It's very bad for UFC, though.
Yeah. I just look at it, I mean, how many titles have they had to vacate or put up in a tournament, and there you go, here's another one.
Yeah, and the one that they could least afford because it was the one title that was the most over title of them all. Because the heavyweight champion, because it's been so screwed up, and because they really don't, most of the good heavyweights are in Pride, that's never been taken seriously. Like most people, if you say who's the heavyweight champion, the real world champion, it's Fedor. But if you say who the real light heavyweight champion is, I think more people would say Tito than Vanderlei Silva, if only because when they did fight, Tito beat Vanderlei Silva.
Yeah.
So then they lost that. He walked out. It's been like that from day one in UFC when Royce Gracie walked out after the draw with Ken Shamrock. Ever since then, UFC has been about, Ken Shamrock left. It's been about making stars, and as soon as they make stars, they want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And as long as that happens, they're never going to have that long-term momentum that you need.
They will always be ECW.
They'll be exactly what it is. They'll be ECW. Not this coming week, but next week, I'm going to continue with the history of the WWF feature, which, boy, last night made me feel good. So many people were coming up saying how much they thought that the part 2 was like the best thing they'd read in a long time. So
they were awesome.
Oh, part 3 is going to be really good too, and it'll be on the 1984 through. I'm thinking about 1992 period, which is the Hulk Hogan era, the first Hulk Hogan era of wrestling, and the Wrestling War of '84, which continued on, and actually maybe the most pivotal period in history of the business. I don't know. Some people get mad at me for saying that, but I think it was actually.
Are you going to do this for some other titles too?
God, it's so popular. I think I probably will for the NWA title at some point. But what are
like a book that you could put together when you're done?
Okay, but what other, aside from the NWA title, what other titles could I even do it with? Do you think?
Well, I was mostly thinking about the NWA title.
Yeah, I could do it for the NWA title. AWA title, I don't see it because it was just the AWA.
Well, it could be a short piece.
Actually, I should. I'd probably do it.
It's part of the history of wrestling, whether, you know what I mean?
Yeah, people are liking it. I mean, it was really scary. I was at the Cauliflower Alley banquet last night in Las Vegas, and there were, a lot of readers there. And it was like, there was the basic theme is, these issues have been great, but we don't watch wrestling anymore. I mean, they were aware of, I think that most of them were aware that of WrestleMania. But there were people I was telling about, the Brock Lesnar-Kurt Angle match that had no idea that he landed on his head because they were out of town and hadn't seen their Observer. I mean, they didn't watch Mania.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they really, when they say they didn't watch, they don't watch. But,
well, I remember people would always ask us, his readership really suffered since things went down. And I think the people that read these newsletters are fans of the newsletters, and they will read them whether there's wrestling in this country or not.
Well, I hope you're right, but I'm not sure about that. Okay.
Not all of them, obviously, but there's a core that would.
There's definitely a core, but I don't know. I've had periods where I don't know. I mean, if it goes away, I don't know. Yeah, Bruce Hart did a big, long speech.
Well, if it went away, we wouldn't have a whole lot to write about, but...
I could do history forever. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I really could. Thank God.
Didn't the Roller Jam newsletters last for like 20 years after it died? The Roller Derby?
I don't think they're around anymore, but yeah, 20 years I would say they easily, because they were doing them they were around in the 90s, and that thing was pretty much done on a national basis probably by 75.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did, but they didn't have the kind of readership the Observer had.
Yeah.
But as far as lasting, yeah. But like Cauliflower Alley and these things, I mean, there's always going to be some wrestling. I mean, they still have roller derby reunions and that, so, I mean, that aspect of it, in the history and all that, there will be something, and there will be the fans who will always remember it that grew up with it and stuff, but, that doesn't mean that it's going to exist on the kind of a level that it's on right now where, there are guys making, $1 million a year doing it, or even $100,000 a year doing it for that matter.
Well, I was just talking to someone last night we were talking about how WWE has become WCW.
And it has.
Yeah, and the big difference is WCW died in a year or 2 years or whatever, whereas WWE has so much money.
Oh, yeah, they're not going to die in a year. No way.
We will be reliving WCW for like 10 years before something, you know what I mean? Before
you know what? But
really has to happen.
But if they don't turn it around, this is going to be more painful because it's going to be a slow.
It'll be far more painful.
Because it's going to be a slow, brutal death, and we'll already know the end result. I mean, because that's why the WCW thing was so much more painful for me than other people, because I already lived through it with the roller derby when I was a kid, and it was the exact same thing. And what happened afterwards is again the exact same thing. The one company went down and the other company went down. And I mean, the difference...
Like with WCW, we knew it was going to die, and then within 3 years it was dead, whereas...
I didn't know it was going to die. I knew it was going to be a disaster. I didn't know it was going to die until the day that they, they canceled the programming. That was only, like, a couple weeks before it really did die.
Okay, well, so let's say we knew it was going to crumble.
We knew it was going to crumble for a couple of years, absolutely.
Okay, and within 3 years it had, but with WWE, they have so much money that... We know it's going to crumble, but we could be watching it crumble for like 15 years or 10 years and just suffer every minute of it.
Well, the thing is, though, the day that the TV programmer says, we don't want you anymore, that's when it crumbles real fast.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole business, and this whole business is still television. I mean, if you look back historically, it's not based on the popularity of the business, although that's a factor. It's based on what some TV guy thinks at that moment. I mean, when we'll get into this when I write about the thing in '84. I mean, really, what won the wrestling war for Vince McMahon was not necessarily winning with wrestling fans. It was winning with media executives. People in newspapers who thought wrestling was cool, and more importantly, Dick Ebersol. Dick Ebersol put the thing on NBC. I mean, that was the kind of exposure that his opponents, couldn't touch. And I mean, that was a big deal. And that wasn't the only deal. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Vince McMahon won that war. The main one being he was the best promoter by far of all of them. But
everyone else was stupid.
They were short-sighted. I don't want to say they were stupid, but they did not see the future.
Yeah.
And believe me, I talked to most of them, and they did not. Their future was a week from Friday. That was what the problem was.
That's familiar.
Yeah, because that's what the future is now with WWE. Anyway,
here's a question.
Yes.
If they lost TV, do you think that there's enough of a loyal, hardcore WWE audience that they could go the TNA route and be more successful and last for a while?
They would last for a little while, but they would go down very fast. And there would not be enough of an audience for them to tour and make money. And their pay-per-views would go down real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do pay-per-views, I think, that would do 80,000 buys, a month.
Yeah.
But not 250.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think. I mean, the name will get you to a point, but really, when you're off TV for a long time, boy,
out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. I mean, all those people that subscribe to the newsletters and stuff, those people they'll know when the pay-per-view is, and, but those casual fans that really make the difference, all the drunks that were in the bar with you that didn't want to see the Kurt Angle match, they're toast. The day that thing's off TV, they're gone the next day.
Oh, yeah.
Every one of them. Okay, let's go to the phone calls. We're going to start in Chicago with Dan. What's going on, Dan?
Dave, how you doing? How you doing, Brian?
Doing really good.
Hey, I got at least one of the two Olympic gold.
Well, everyone's got one. Tell me the other one.
Well, all I know is Ken Patera.
Well, you're wrong on that one. Sorry.
Really? Okay.
No. He didn't win a gold medal. He bombed out, actually, but he went to the 72 Olympics in weightlifting.
Okay, then I don't know then.
Okay.
Listen,
I can't hear the callers.
Uh-oh. Well,
I don't know if they can fix that for the next one.
Okay, we'll try to get that fixed. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
what do you think Bill DeMont's going to make the switch to Raw to fight Goldberg?
I don't know.
Do you think he's going to go on a win streak since he got a big reaction?
Who, Bill Goldberg?
Yeah.
He better.
Okay.
He better not beat him.
Now, the other thing with Hogan, is that a storyline? What's going on?
In what sense? Everything's a storyline if it's on TV, yeah.
Okay, well, what are they what do they have planned with that? Do you know?
No, I actually don't know what they have planned, but I mean, Hogan's wrestling on the next pay-per-view, so whatever it is, it ain't going to be long.
Okay, and with Steve Austin, I heard that he's going to do something with Bischoff and still be around.
Yeah, not as a wrestler though.
Right, but I heard he's going to do like different pay-per-views, not like Raw matches or whatever.
Don't think so.
No.
Don't think so. Hey, anything can happen, but that was certainly not the plan as of 2 days ago.
And do you think with WrestleMania 20 coming up, in a year, obviously, do you think they're going to have Piper Hogan WrestleMania?
I don't think that it'll last that long. I think it'll come quicker than that.
Okay, but you don't think with the Madison Square Garden thing, history with them that they can't?
They could do it. There's nothing wrong with doing it. I got nothing against Roddy Piper being in for, a month here or doing a pay-per-view with Hogan. If Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper were to do a pay-per-view match and it was presented as a nostalgic, nice-feeling match, fourth from the top, and promoted as fourth from the top, that would be excellent. Mm-hmm. It really would.
Putting in his age in the cage would be a bad idea.
Yes, but building the whole thing, and this is the big mistake of Mania, the big mistake of Mania, obviously Vince and Hogan had a better match than people thought, and people were into it, but the big mistake was that match was promoted as the match, and that it kills them for house shows because the two guys that all of Bryan's drunk friends wanted to see are not going on the road for house shows. Yeah. And they're not going to buy, and those people are not buying tickets to house shows, and they probably didn't go to Raw the next night either.
For the record, too, my favorite match on Mania was Shawn Michaels and Jericho. The only thing is I was hoping it'd be a pass the torch match. Michaels could have passed the torch to Jericho.
In hindsight, now that everything's gone down the way it has, I think that Jericho should have won. But yeah. I know, what, Bryan made a real good point to me during the week, and that is, I'll bet you that Jericho didn't want to win. In fact, I would almost be sure of it. So, that can,
And one last thing, if I may.
Yes.
Do you think they'll ever break the record of 94,000 in the Silverdome? Do you think they'll ever break that record? Or
this was probably the last year that they would have enough popularity. Maybe one more year, and they're going to the Garden next year. Yeah. But they could have broken that record any of the last 4 years, just because it's WrestleMania. The year they had Rock and Austin, they sold out far quicker. They would have broken the record for that. It's just a question. Well, first of all, the record's not 94; it's 78. But aside from that, all they got to do is go to a building that can hold enough people, and they'll break that record. That record to me. That live attendance record to me is not as impressive as some of the other things that they did on that day.
I'm talking about the 93,000 they had at the Silverdome.
Yeah, that was 78,000.
No, that was 93,173.
Okay, well, it wasn't, but that's the story. Welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And, I was thinking about what an awesome wrestling promoter Vince McMahon was in the 80s. It's kind of sad.
I just hope that Dan didn't get the 93,000 number from my Penthouse column. So I profusely apologize. It was not my fault.
Why don't you tell everyone the story of that? Because that's actually a great story about modern journalism.
When I wrote wrestling columns, and I'd like to make sure that everybody knows they were wrestling columns, for Penthouse, they had these fact checkers that went through to confirm that everything that I had written down was true. And we had an article, I think it was the very first one I wrote, which I should have learned a valuable lesson with this first column. And I wrote that WrestleMania 3, in fact, had the 78,000 people. And me, as a source, was not enough for them. So I attempted to use the Observer, which was also not enough. And finally, I actually had a statement from the promoter of the event. And the promoter of the event saying that, yes, there were 78,000 people there, but no, that was not enough for the fact checkers who went on the Internet to check the facts and learned there were actually 93,000, which is what ended up in the column.
I'll tell you my favorite version of the similar story was when Andre the Giant passed away. There was an article in Sports Illustrated, and in the article, have I ever told you the story, Brian?
Yes, you wrote the letter.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So anyway, yeah. They wrote a story on a scorecard piece on Andre the Giant's death and mentioned that he was 7'5". And I wrote them a letter and I go, Andre was
7'4".
No, they billed him at 7'5" for a time in his career also.
I see.
Okay, but anyway, and I wrote a letter and I just said, Andre was really 6'10", and I even sent them a picture of Andre with Wilt Chamberlain where it was quite obvious that Andre was really 6'10". Wow,
you were desperate to.
Oh yeah, that one and Newsweek with Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler when Jim Carrey got hurt. But I will say this. Okay, I'll go to that one in a second. But anyway, so they wrote me back and they just go, we know who you are, and of course they knew who I was. I've written articles for them before, and they go, we're sure you're right, and it looks like you're right, but since the New York Times and everyone else is saying 7'4", we don't feel the need to correct it.
Wow. Well, there's journalism for you.
But so anyway, now the other one was.
I never heard the Jim Carrey one.
Okay, well you remember when Jerry Lawler and Jim Carrey had their little to-do?
Yeah.
Okay, and Newsweek wrote about this whole thing about how it was the same thing that Jerry Lawler had done to Andy Kaufman, and wrote it like the Andy Kaufman thing was real. This is before the movie came out, but after Andy Kaufman's book came out, it doesn't even matter. Everyone knew, So anyway, I wrote them and I said. It was a pro wrestling angle. Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman probably wrestled each other 30 times, maybe more. And they never even wrote me back.
Well, there you go.
If I ever botch something that bad, like if something comes up and it turns out that some, match in Pride turns out to have been work that I thought wasn't, believe me, I'll write about it. I'm not going to say, oh, well, since no one else knew, Well,
the thing with the media was there were so many articles up here about WrestleMania. And there was one article that pretty much was entirely accurate, but they wrote that the finish of the Shawn Michaels match was Shawn winning with a super kick. And I thought, you know what?
But that's minor to me.
Yeah, that's the point. But I'm looking back and I'm thinking, okay, look at all the historians that use old articles to confirm or deny stories about what happened
there you go.
in the 20s.
Right.
And you can have an article where every single solitary thing is correct, so you assume that everything else must be true, and one tiny little mistake like that, and history's changed.
Well, I'll bet you that, finishes of all those famous matches, we're relying on newspaper accounts, and I'm sure that most of them are right, and many of them are wrong.
Yeah, why would a reporter from 1910 or 1911 covering a Frank Gotch match be any more human than a reporter covering WrestleMania today?
There'd be no. In fact, there would be less because there was a lot less fact checking back then.
Yeah. So there you go.
There you go. Let's go to Aaron in Vegas. Aaron, what's going on?
Guys, how you doing tonight?
Doing really good.
Can I take a shot at your question?
Yes.
Is one of them the Iron Sheik?
No.
No. All right.
Iron Sheik.
Two things I wanted to get to. With Piper and Sable both being back, who are they going after next? How long is it going to be before we see Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man Randy Savage, Jim Anvil Neidhart?
Jim the Anvil Neidhart they may not be calling, but the other ones, I swear, I think they're going to call both of them. I really do. I would never have thought Ultimate Warrior Savage. Yeah, I would think, but I'm thinking he's calling everyone. I think he's just completely gone now. It's just like
I talked to some people down at the Cauliflower Alley on Friday when they were doing some setup and some checking in, and there was a rumor that Savage might be coming in for a little short run.
It wouldn't shock me. It's nuts.
Is it going to be one of these things where Vince just tries to bring in all these old timers to shoot down Hulkamania? Is that where they're going with that? Maybe.
No, I think that he's
lost it totally, and
I think he's lost. I think he has hit the Eric Bischoff point where he no longer believes he can make new stars, and all he can do is bring back old stars, and that is death when you're a promoter.
Isn't Savage? He's like 51 now, is he? I know he's in great shape, but
Savage is 51. 50.
50.
50. But he looks great because he's big, but he couldn't even work at the end in WCW.
Yeah,
and I think he's bigger now than he was at the end of WCW.
Oh, yeah. If you saw him even in just the Spider-Man movie, he looked, pretty jacked.
Well, I remember there's some picture in some magazine I saw of him. He looked freakish.
Yeah, he was, unquestionably huge. The other thing is, they really expect people to buy into Kevin Nash, all of a sudden becoming Diesel again?
Yes, they do. Expect you to buy that.
Are they going to call him just Diesel, or are they going to call him Kevin Diesel Nash, or what's the...
I guess we'll find out tomorrow night. I mean, I'm sure they'll acknowledge that he's Kevin Nash.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to do this thing where they pretend they don't know his real name, but
yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. That's too insulting, even for them.
Yeah, so I just figured he's got to be Big Daddy Cool again and all that. So
yeah, well, he always wanted to do that again, and plus it appeases, it plays to Vince's ego that hey, the star that you made me was bigger than the star that Eric made me.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't, but I mean, Vince doesn't know that because he never watched the other guy's shows.
So no, the other thing I wanted to ask about Sable is because she probably has absolutely no leverage whatsoever now, so she's basically at Vince's mercy. So he's probably going to put her in every gimmick match, degrading situation he possibly can.
He sure started that way, didn't he?
Yeah.
But
the very angle that she vetoed before she left, wasn't it? Some sort of lesbian angle?
Yeah. Actually, every girl in that company's vetoed that angle at least once.
Yeah. So I just thought that was quite interesting.
Which one, the lesbian?
The lesbian angle, yeah. The only ones who didn't were Tori and Dawn Marie, because they asked everyone to do it at some point.
I just thought it was interesting that her first night back in, they had her, plant a little kiss, and that was one of the chief reasons she left in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's...
So I figured it's many months of mud, pudding, and pool matches for her.
Oh, that's not going to work after about the second week.
Yeah, that's what I was figuring.
I think that the Sable one's just a huge mistake on so many levels, and it's just sad because, they have women on their roster, like Gail Kim, who's never even seen television, who's, 15 years,
Nikita.
Yeah,
Nicole Fink,
Nikita.
Jackie Gator. Well, Jackie Gator will be on TV soon, most
She's
likely.
going to be Canyon's manager, right? Is that correct? Is that what
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what about Linda Miles? Any plan for her call-up or no?
And I haven't heard. I haven't heard. Put it that way. And then she's not ready either.
Right.
Because I've watched OVW religiously. She's not ready.
All right, guys. I appreciate it.
Nikita?
No, Linda Miles.
Yeah.
And Jackie Gator, for that matter. I mean, talk about not ready.
Well, she's ready for what she does in OVW, but nothing else.
I mean, as a personality, yeah. But let's see. Let's go to Justin in Oil City, Pennsylvania. Justin, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Going good.
Great job on the Mania issue, I just have to say.
Thank you. Give me me or Brian?
Oh, yours. I
can't hear him
yet.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen Brian's yet, unfortunately, either, which was actually I was pretty upset with because I had a nice long plane flight where I was planning on reading Figure 4, and then it didn't come.
I'm sure it's undoubtedly the most hilarious wrestling read of the week.
I don't know. Is your thing funny, Brian?
Which one?
The WrestleMania review.
I hope it is.
Okay, good. Well, then I
go out of my way to make it funny, but I think that there was enough funny stuff that happened that it should be at least somewhat entertaining.
Okay, good.
Actually, Dave, your review of the Hogan-Vince match from Mania was one of the funniest things I've ever read in The Observer.
Well, thank you.
Roddy Piper, fresh from breaking the world cheeseburger eating record.
Uh-oh. Now he's going to find out I said that. Well, actually, he already knows, but he's going to... I don't want to say what he's going to do next.
What happened?
What?
What happened?
Oh,
here's the caller.
When I'm about Roddy Piper breaking the world cheeseburger eating record before he came to WrestleMania.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. I shouldn't be joking about Roddy Piper.
Especially when you were supposed to give your son a hug from Uncle Roddy. I can't believe you would play him like that. The Olympic gold medal question,
yes.
Is it Bad News Brown?
No, he won a bronze, but that's pretty close.
And, for the life of me, I just don't know who the other one is.
Most people don't. I think Brian's the only. Well, we'll see. We got a bunch of people that are on board that think they know. So someone will, I think.
If they gave Matt Hardy and Ray 15 minutes and then the SmackDown tag match more time, don't you think this could have probably exceeded WrestleMania 17?
Yeah. Yeah, they could. It could. If they had just taken out the women's catfight and Fred Durst and given that time to those two matches, I think it would have been the best WrestleMania ever, yeah.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
The Steve Austin stuff. Now, if he had the Lloyd Youngblood surgery and then a year and a half after working on his neck, he's thrashed again, does that mean Chris Benoit is going to be not feeling so good 6 months from now?
Brian, do you want to answer that question?
I couldn't hear the question.
Basically, since Steve Austin lasted about a year and a half of working before he was thrashed again after the Lloyd Youngblood surgery, how much more time does Chris Benoit have?
I don't know, because I don't know where I was reading it, but I actually think it was the Angle interview on WWE.com where he said Youngblood said that Austin had the worst neck that he had ever seen and that Angle was a close second. So
that means
obviously Steve was just thrashed totally beyond belief. And I have no idea where Benoit's neck was in that, but I guess Benoit's still holding up fine, so who knows?
Yeah. I wonder, and I mean, time's going to tell. But I'll tell you the other thing, you know, again, from last night, being at Cauliflower Alley, those guys, especially the ones, I would say, from about in their 60s and up, oh, man, you know, they're really thrashed.
Yeah.
And they did nothing compared to what the guys today are doing. It's actually quite frightening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, you know, you can look at things like the ring was harder and stuff like that, but I mean, just going out there and look at Jeff Hardy now at 25 or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, think of these guys when in their 40s and in their 50s. I can't even imagine their 70s and 80s like these guys.
Yeah, it's scary, you know, look into the future. That's why I wish like more of the active wrestlers were there, you know, to just talk to some of these guys and, you know, like when Harley Race, you know, says, you know, don't do a diving headbutt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I remember him saying that, and I was always thinking, Chris Benoit's a machine. Look at that man's neck. He's not gonna injure himself doing the diving headbutt. He's unbreakable. And what happened? He went down.
Yeah. And hey, speaking of neck, Kurt Angle.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. We're gonna get to Jay in Boston. Jay, what's going on? Jay. Is Jay not with us? Okay, we're going to James in Seattle. James, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I was afraid. I had always heard that it was the Iron Sheik with the gold medal, but apparently that was just an urban legend. So.
Yeah, Iron Sheik actually was never even in the Olympics. Which, when I was younger, I always thought he was at least in the Olympics, but he actually lost in the Iranian trials before the '68 Olympics.
And I presume I can't take the cheaters route and say Muhammad Ali, special guest referee.
And he never wrestled in the WWF, but it's not Muhammad Ali. In fact, I think the other guy won 2 gold medals, but I could be wrong about that. I know for sure he won 1, though.
Yeah, I knew he didn't wrestle. I was hoping I could cheat and say special guest referee, but anyway.
Yeah.
No, I was at...
I thought you were going to get this one, believe it or not.
Huh?
I thought you were going to get this.
You thought I was going to get it?
Yeah, I did. Okay, well, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I was at WrestleMania. I'm not sure if Bryan can hear me, but...
I don't think he can.
Okay, but I was really surprised that, you know,
what?
Bryan Kendrick, he got a huge response in Spokane, but he wasn't at WrestleMania in his home state, and I thought that was...
And they had done an angle about how much he wanted to be at WrestleMania.
I know, it was ridiculous, and that was sort of something that, you know, you guys seem to like the pay-per-view a lot, I really didn't. And
really?
It seemed to me that there were a lot of good matches, but there was, every little thing, there was something marring it, you know? Like, Matt and Ray, I think, are 2 of, respectively, the best heels and faces in the WWE, and they get 5 minutes.
Well, I think everybody would agree that that was a mistake, and I don't know why it was made, because I would think that even like, you know, well, I mean, I know what it was, that they thought they had so much in those, they wanted to give those main events time, and, you know, to them, you know, the celebrities were a big deal, because they spent a lot of money for them.
Yeah, and Limp Bizkit, 10 minutes, there was that one stretch where I think the crowd was just dead, and if you can ask Bryan if he felt the same way, but the Shawn Michaels match, Jericho match was great, but I think the crowd, as much as Michaels was the face, I felt the reaction was a little strained because I think that they knew that Jericho should have won.
What do you think about that, Bryan? Did you hear that?
No, I couldn't hear him.
He thought that people live were a little bit strained because they thought Jericho should have beat Michaels.
I didn't get that, but I was in the
he
bar.
was on the bar, so
yeah.
Everybody was so happy in the bar, so that's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
And then they had Limp Bizkit, then the Pello fight, then Booker T doing the job, and that was just terrible organization, I thought, you know? I mean, you put 4 things that are going to kill the crowd right in a row.
We are going to start with Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. What I want to ask about is I kind of got the idea, and I think it's perfect timing with you going to the Cauliflower Alley Club. I went to see the David Robinson tribute night, and we were supposed to celebrate a guy who did all this on the basketball court, but we ended up celebrating a guy who did all this charity work. And my question to you is, could you talk about some wrestlers who don't ask for attention, who don't, you know, look for that, the rub from the media, but who go far beyond the call of duty when it comes to charity work?
Bill Goldberg.
Really? Well, what kind of things does he do?
He's always doing stuff, and you rarely hear about it. I mean, there's a lot of guys that do a lot of stuff that you don't hear about, but that name comes to my mind because, you know, I'm just aware of it, and because, you know, he doesn't really look for publicity. I'll tell you another one. It's up and down, and Hogan does a lot that you don't hear about, and he does a lot that you do hear about, And there were also times in the 80s where a lot of people covered for Hogan a lot. So it's like a weird thing. It's like I want to compliment him, and he deserves compliments, but it's not. It's not 100%, if you know what I'm saying. But I mean, he's done more than. But you know, partially because of the what's the word? You know, because of the demand for him, he's done more than I would think almost anyone. But Goldberg, of guys I know, you know, who you don't hear about, yeah, he's done a ton.
Okay, I've also heard good things about Chris Nowinski. Even though he's real brand new to the business, I heard he's real good about going to children's hospitals.
He may very well be. A lot of guys are, and I don't know about Chris Nowinski, but it's very possible.
Okay, and let me ask you one more question. On the Piper's Pit, are they going to use this? Because I know he was talking about trying to help the younger talent. Are they going to use the Piper's Pit to push the mid-carders now and get their storylines more across? Or do you think he'll be stuck with Hogan and Vince and...
Well, I mean, it looks like where they're going that it's going to be Hogan and Vince, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
what did you think of Confidential last night? I
didn't see it because I was at Cauliflower Alley, so I missed it. Well, I know Piper was on, but...
Yeah, they showed, like, all the highlights from all the old Piper's Pits. I mean, it was just a...
Well, that's because they're bringing, you know, Piper's Pit starts this week on SmackDown.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I forgot how great he used to be back in the 80s.
He was great. He was a great drawing card.
Yeah, you should try and get a taste of that, and thanks for the time, Dave.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. We're going to go to St. Paul, Minnesota, and Kyle. Kyle, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, how are you doing today?
Doing very good.
Good. I just want to first off say that I loved those 2 history pieces, and I'm really looking forward to the 3rd one. That's going to be great. So.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Before I get on to Bob Sapp, I do want to mention I got a great news story for you. When the death of Curt Hennig, I was working that night at the radio station, and the AP report came across the wire, you know, writing up his biography. And I don't know if you saw this, but they mentioned he was 44 years old, and that he had been wrestling for over 30 years. Which
made it very difficult.
Right, exactly. He had been 14. And, of course, they also mentioned he had a high school degree, which would have been really difficult. So
yeah.
I called the guy that works at the AP. You know, we talk, you know, almost every night, so he knows who I am. And I said, hey, you realize he'd be 14 when he started? And he's like, well, you know, that's my information. And I'm like, well, you can call Dave. You know, you can call Wade, or I even gave him Larry Henning's number. I said, call Larry and ask him, you know, how old he was. And he's like, all right, well, we'll get around to it. So in the future reports from the AP, they mentioned that according to an online biography from the Star Tribune, he started wrestling over 30 years ago, which, of course, the Star Tribune article was just taken and rewritten of the AP article that was originally published.
That is amazing. I'll give you a good one. A couple of years ago, many years ago, a guy, and I don't even remember his name, George, I think it might have been George Arena. I'm pretty sure it was George Arena. Who was one of the many Gorgeous George imitators in the 50s, but not the real one, and he passed away.
Right.
And I mean, I heard it all. You know, it was in USA Today. It was on The Wire. Paul Harvey, you know, the Gorgeous George died.
Yep.
And Alex Marvez, who writes for the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel. I don't know who was writing for it at the time. I think he was still in Denver or in Boulder at the time. But anyway, he called right away. You know, AP and just goes, look, you know, the Gorgeous George died in '63. This is not, you know, the real Gorgeous George. And they, like, you know, were just nasty with him and blew him off. And, you know, what are you calling about, you know?
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah, I always tell people, keep that in mind when you see any kind of news coverage, too. If they'll screw up something simple like that where they could just call Larry Hennig and ask him how old his son was.
Well, I mean, just logic. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, if it was like...
why didn't they go, hey, gee, you'd have been 14. And I said that to our news person because our news person carried that. Yeah. And I called them and I said, what are you doing? And they're like, well, you know, it could have happened. And I'm like, well, yeah, it could have happened, but it didn't.
Yeah. It couldn't. I don't think it could have happened in Minnesota. They weren't letting anyone wrestle at 14. And
like Bret Hart, you know, wrestled a match when he was 15 or something like that, didn't he?
16 or 17. Owen may have wrestled when he was 14 once under a mask.
Right.
I think I heard that story.
You know, I had to admit that maybe it could have happened, but obviously, you know,
but it didn't. Yeah.
Cool. Anyways, I did see the Bob Sapp fight.
Okay.
And I have to say, I thought it was very depressing. It made me very sad.
Just because he laid down?
Well, you know, I mean, it was just like one quick jab, and, you know, he was done. And, I mean, I've seen the cut afterwards, and it looks pretty bad. But, you know, you don't want to see a guy like that go down like that, you know, that quickly. And
it was a reality, though.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can't be fighting guys at that level and not training and running around being a celebrity. I knew that was, you know, I for months I knew that was gonna kill Bob Sapp this year.
Yeah.
Was he became too good? I mean, too big, and everybody was just, you know, and he was fighting too often and never train, you know, not training enough. And these guys, you know, like that guy, Mirko Krokop, the guy he's good. I mean, in fact, he's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give Bob a little bit of credit, he was actually knocked down with 1:22 left in the round, and then you give him the 10-second count. So he lasted all of 1:50.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean that was sad. What do you think they're going to do with him now?
I mean, he's fighting. I think he's supposed to fight Francisco Filo in July.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, obviously, Pride wants him. Because he's still a big draw.
Right.
So I
move him over to wrestling.
I mean, everyone wants him in wrestling. I don't know. I'm sure he'll do some wrestling this year. Yeah. I just don't know with who and when.
Yeah, I would just think that I'd keep him out of shoot fights, or maybe do one a year or something if you could get away with it.
Yeah, but
I'm sure they want to make money too.
There's so much money in him. I mean, the rating for that Crow Cop match was so incredible. So that's they're gonna burn him out. I mean, I knew they would a year ago.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember you writing that. So.
Yeah.
What do you think the deal was with that K1 pay-per-view? I mean, wouldn't it have made more sense to run it as a free commercial?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, after I watched that, I was like, that was just a waste of, making people pay to see that.
Well, if it's a penny, you can't complain.
Right, but, somebody might slip by and see it if it's on for free.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you know what? And the other thing is when I watched it, and I'm seeing all the guys they're promoting all the guys. It was like I felt like I was watching WWE. They're promoting all the guys from the past, not the guys who are going to build their future.
Right.
And K1, while they have a great past in Japan, they have no past in the United States.
Right.
So all of those guys, Andy Hoog and stuff, it means nothing in this country.
Yep. And then they sold their pay-per-view around a guy that's not going to be here.
Who's not going to be on the pay-per-view. I know. I watched that, and I mean, it was very perplexing, and it was another one of those moments where I'm going like, does anyone get it?
And finally, I wish Bryan was here to hear this, but I'll just say that if Bryan's picking Chuck Liddell, then I'm probably going to have to go with Randy.
I know he hasn't been good on main events lately, but I don't know. I think Chuck Liddell's going to win, but we'll see.
The only thing I think Randy has over Tito is Randy's a better wrestler.
And Randy's a better wrestler, but I'm wondering what the weight. If Randy Couture was coming in at 235 or 230, and Chuck was coming in at 230, Randy at full strength. I think that Randy's a good enough wrestler because he's a better wrestler than Tito. I think he would take Chuck down.
Right.
And that would neutralize Chuck's advantages.
Yep.
But at 205, I don't know.
Right, yeah, that's the big question.
That's the big question mark, yeah.
Cool, well, great, thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Kyle.
Have a good night.
Can you believe those stories? I mean, what can I say? We're going to go to Alan in Deerfield Beach. Alan, what's going on?
How's it going, man?
That's going pretty good.
Pretty good. A lot of people answered asked the same question I was going to ask, yeah, brother. But I wanted to know about Piper and Hogan and, when the match is going to come off. Is it going to come off at Backlash or whatever?
It might. Might be a tag. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be at Backlash. But, they may hold it off a little longer. It's not like they're holding it off until Mania or anything like that, though.
Are you surprised with Piper being back in light of the disparaging remarks he said about Vince in his book and so forth?
No, because stuff like that doesn't surprise me a lot. I mean, I was more surprised that Vince brought him back than I wouldn't be surprised that he would go back because I mean he worked for or he did those 2 shots for NWA TNA, so I mean and obviously WWE is far more high profile than that. But now understanding that if you told me that Vince was going to bring back Sable, then obviously Roddy Piper shouldn't surprise me at all.
And what is Piper's relationship? Is it cordial between him and Hogan? Or?
Right now, very good.
Very good.
I mean, they've had their ups and downs like everyone has, but right now, very good.
Okay. And also, Bobby the Brain Heenan in his book, I was going to ask you, he mentioned that Big John Studd and Andre had a real-life rivalry, and I also heard that from a Honky Tonk Man on the Shoot interview. Is that true?
John Studd loved Andre, but at the end, when the time when John Studd came back for that run as a babyface and Andre was a heel,
didn't get along?
It was tough. Yeah, Andre didn't want to do a lot of stuff, and it was. But I mean, as far as like life, if John was still alive, and and was asked about Andre, he would have nothing but good to say about him. But at the end, because I remember when Andre died, John Studd's kind of thing was I prefer not to think of those that last run, was kind of how he put it.
Is that right? Also, if I may ask you another question, going back into the archives, I was on a radio station, Between the Ropes. You heard of this?
Yeah.
The show. And Vito DiNucci mentioned something about backstage problems between Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan. You know anything about that in Tampa during when they were booking?
No, actually I don't. I mean, it may have happened. I just don't know.
Yeah, he said some fights and stuff, and things got a little heated between them.
Well, I'm sure that there was. It's only natural that things would get heated because you got 2 opinionated guys. But I mean, as far as like if it, how heated. I don't know. I've never heard any of the stories, but
like backstage fights or something. He said, you know.
I never heard that. I mean, it's possible, but I never heard it.
I mean, the egos clash or whatever.
Well, egos at the top always clash in wrestling, especially, you know, when you're in the same territory and you're the two guys on top and all that. I mean, that's you know, I'm sure it happens, but a lot of the time in wrestling when the egos clash, they kind of keep it quiet.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, very welcome. Let's go to Jonathan in Savannah. Jonathan, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Dave? I got a guess for you on your question.
Uh-huh.
Is it Leon Spinks?
Did he ever work for WWF? I mean, that's not the answer I was looking for. I don't think he ever did.
Okay.
Yeah, he worked for Lawler, and he worked in Japan, and where else did Leon Spinks work? I think he worked in WWA in Indiana as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured I'd try.
Okay.
But what questions I had for you, my first question was, is Jamie Noble doomed?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say forever, but right now, yeah, because his big advocate was Heyman, and, you know, I mean, even when Heyman was still writing, you could see, you know, Jamie Noble, for whatever reason, he was just getting buried. And you know, I thought him and Brian Kendrick, you know, for a 2.5-minute match was quite good on Thursday night.
Yeah, it was really good, and that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think it was that one in the Team Angle match were my favorite matches from Thursday.
Right. And I guess another question that I have to go with that is, do you think, I think I've asked you this before, with the ratings, I guess they're staying the same for SmackDown, or around the same.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that Heyman will get off of that, what is he, like an advisor or whatever, he's a role, and actually
go back to what he was doing?
Yeah.
It's a possibility, but I don't think the odds are all that good.
Okay.
But, you know, yeah, it's certainly a possibility.
Okay.
And if in enough time, I think that, you know, everything goes full circle when it comes to that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, if they're going to bring Roddy Piper back, I could certainly see them bringing Paul Heyman back to Wright, you know, in a year. So.
Other questions that I have for you, my one that I wanted to really ask was, I know it cannot just be me, but JR and King on Raw, for everybody who watches Raw, is almost down there to velocity calling, in terms of just, like, at least for me, the velocity calling is humorous in some ways because the cat is so bad that it's funny, but...
Well, I guess you should have to look at Lawler the same way, or else you can't... But I know what you're saying. But Lawler's not in it. I know what it is.
He doesn't, like, I don't even know, he doesn't even pay attention to the match half the time. And then, like, JR, like, I don't know, he just forgets to call, he doesn't call any moves. Like, when you watch SmackDown, and if you watch...
They are calling a lot more moves. I think they're out there... I don't know, but, you know, Lawler's, it's tough, you know?
Would they have any plans of changing that lineup, or is that just going to be the Raw fixture till...
I have not heard of any plans. Nothing would shock me in wrestling.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I guess they'd bring Coach out there like they did that.
But that was worse, so...
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, it's like... if you replace one of them, because I can't see replacing both, but if you replace one of them, you got to replace him with someone better. I mean, and if the cat, you know, I would rather see Lawler than the cat, because on Raw, you know, the cat would really be an embarrassment.
Yeah, but he doesn't have that post-production to...
Yeah. Oh, could you imagine? He has post-production, he's that bad.
And my other question I want to ask you, since Booker T did not win the belt at Mania, am I to assume that he is going to be relegated to his upper mid-card status pretty much?
Well, when they get a Raw pay-per-view, he'll be... I mean, as far as main event on a pay-per-view...
Or, like, even having a chance to win the belt, because I guess the plan now is Goldberg comes in, beats Rock, then he's going to take on Triple H, and Triple H is either going to drop the strap to Goldberg.
Well, until that happens, I wouldn't count on anything like that for sure, but that's how I would do it, yeah.
And then, like, that just leaves, like, I'm just thinking...
But, you know, there's still a problem there, in that then what do you do for Goldberg once he's beaten Triple H and Rock? You're going to have to, you know, you're going to have to get somebody for him. But at the same time, they got to get Goldberg over.
Yeah.
If Triple H was not going to lose the title to Goldberg fairly soon, he should have lost it to Booker, because at that point, then you're talking about having to make someone, and you know, he beat him. And if Booker, you know, wins next, then where does Goldberg go? So to me, I think that the title's got to go to Goldberg. Plus, I think that they have to do everything they can to make Goldberg a superstar real fast, because they need a superstar. If it doesn't take, then you can do something else, but you've got to go for it.
Right.
And it may not take, and I know everyone who's got those reasons why. I agree with you, but sometimes the same thing with Lesnar. Everybody was saying all the reasons why Lesnar wasn't ready, and Lesnar's not 100% ready. And even now, even though he's gotten a lot better in the ring than 6 months ago, he's still not 100% there on his interviews. But they needed to make a superstar, and no one, there's no Steve Austins out there. So Lesnar was the best bet that they had, and Goldberg, at least with Goldberg, at one point he was a huge star in the industry, and he's been gone for a couple of years, and he's never wrestled hardly any of these guys on the roster at all, so it's an all-new, fresh matchup. So you got to go for it.
Right, and do you think, like, Jericho, is he going to be still doing a program with Michaels, or what are they going to do with him?
I think that tomorrow night we're going to get a real good idea of where it's going. I think that, it's going into a tag, and then maybe a 6-man tag on the pay-per-view. It could be, if Kevin Nash gets involved, maybe with Flair on the other side, unless Nash goes with, unless Nash ends up with, going heel, and then it'll be something else. I don't know.
I just wanted to say, Dave, I don't know if you saw did you see Raw last week?
Yeah, of course.
Did you see, I just wanted to say that Flair on Raw, that's about the best I've seen Flair in a long time on Raw.
You mean when he wrestled, or when he was bumping for Hurricane?
When he was bumping for Hurricane, and when he ripped that kid's mask off.
Oh, that was funny. That was funny, yeah.
He was just, I don't know, and everything, like backstage with Booker T, oh, jeez, I don't know. He finally did something halfway.
Well, he can do it, he knows
They don't ever let him do anything.
Well, part of, there's a lot of reasons for that, and one of it is, again, they're in a rebuilding stage. You don't want to have this guy dominate the whole show and show everyone up, because he's not going to be wrestling your main events, and if you don't, you could use him better, and let him do promos and everything, but, I think Hunter wants to do his own promos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually wouldn't be the worst idea for Flair to do Hunter's promos, because then people wouldn't be bored with Hunter in that way.
Yeah.
But that's not happening. Anyway, all right?
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, you're very welcome. We're going to go to Jeff in L.A. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, how are you doing?
Doing really good.
Okay, I had a question on the trivia.
Yes.
Was that Edouard Carpentier?
No, he never won a gold medal in anything.
Oh, he didn't?
No.
It's interesting when I think of him, though, this will kind of date me a bit, but when I was a real tiny little kid, the day that President Kennedy was killed, at the Olympic Auditorium, they canceled the match that night, which was supposed to be Carpentier in a face-versus-face match for the old WWE title with Bearcat Wright.
Really? That might have been a horrible match.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've seen Bearcat Wright look all right, and Carpentier, I guess when Carpentier was younger, he was very acrobatic and everything. By the time I saw Carpentier, he was impressive with his moves, but at the same time, he wasn't top shelf to me, like the level of like Dory Funk Jr. or Jack Briscoe or somebody like that.
Exactly. So when did you first start, about what year did you first start watching?
1970.
So I'm a little bit older. I started 63, and Beck, I guess I got...
So you're like starting when Mike Tenay started.
I was just going to say...
I think he started in 62.
Mike would kill me for saying this.
Yeah, in fact, Mike did start in 62. I know that for a fact, yeah.
Mike would kill me for saying this, but my claim to fame, I'm actually, I think, a year or two older than Mike. But speaking of which, do you think it's conceivable that they would ever put him in the JR slot, or...
In WWE?
Yeah. Or are there reasons why not?
I don't say that it's 100% inconceivable, because I've seen so many strange things happen, but I don't expect it. When WCW went down, they didn't hire him, so what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Then again, he's good, and I don't think he's what they want. I think that they want younger guys that don't know what they're doing as announcers, it seems like. Because that's sort of how they hire, they're looking for pretty faces. And
exactly.
To me, I talked to some people in the company about this just about a week ago. We were talking about, it was regarding Gene Okerlund.
Right.
And, if I have my choice, I have my pluses and minuses when it comes to Gene Okerlund, but there's nobody in the business better at being Gene Okerlund than Gene Okerlund. And as far as a backstage interviewer on SmackDown, if I had Gene Okerlund or Josh Matthews, obviously my pick is Gene Okerlund.
Right.
And I kind of said that, and it was like, but, Gene's older, and I go, he's not the guy in the main event, he's the guy interviewing the guy in the main event. The guy's doing the interviews, coachman and all that. You don't have to have a good-looking guy announcing. He just has to get the storylines over, and I think they're not thinking like that. I think that,
exactly.
So, anyway.
And just one more thing, if I could, of the current crop, or the guys who have been working the last 8-10 years or so, are there any that you've dealt with that, I guess you would call them kind of off-camera, real-life faces, that guys that, I don't expect you to mention guys that are jerks, but any of them that stand out as really cool guys that you bump into them at the bar or something that would be really friendly?
I think most of the guys are a lot cooler to fans now than, because in the old generation, everybody grew up with the idea that the world is a con and life is a con, and even though they would be nice to you, they were always conning you. And the new generation of wrestlers, I mean, they grew up as wrestling fans, and they, a lot of them, I mean, most of the ones that I've come across have been real nice. I think way more of them are nice than aren't.
That's good. It's interesting that they had when the guys were over in, I think it was in Japan recently, and they had a little clip of it, and you saw a picture of Jericho talking to some fans. He was grinning from ear to ear, like he was really humbled, that the people wanted his autograph and stuff. I thought it was really cool.
I think that a lot of those guys, and Jericho would actually not be one of them because he would really know because he's been everywhere. But if you had some of those younger guys when they go to a foreign country who have never traveled that much outside the United States, and to see that how over they are when they go to a Korea or a South Africa, I think that's got to be a total thrill. Because you see those clips whenever those guys come back from those tours, they're real happy. I mean, they weren't happy after India. Nobody liked that one, but most of these tours that, they're real happy when they come back.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pleasure chatting with you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. We're going to go to David in Long Island, New York. David, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. First, I'm going to try to guess on the trivia question.
Yes.
Now, I was trying to remember the list of Olympians you gave from that Observer Live a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, everyone that I could think of, what I knew wasn't a gold medalist that I knew of. Like Jumbo and Choshu and those people.
Yeah. That's right, because they did all work in WWF at one time.
Yeah, so I'm going to guess, because I could have sworn you threw this name out there, I'm going to say Kurt Angle and Nikita Molkovich?
No. Not Nikita Molkovich. Obviously, Kurt Angle's right, though.
Okay, it was someone like that. I mean, I couldn't... Okay, anyway. I was wondering about what exactly is with this thing where you talk about how Jumbo Shiruda was lazy?
As a night-by-night worker, because he was. I mean, that was his rep in the 80s, big time. One of the things, like all of the guys that would go there, I mean, when there was a TV camera on, he would work really hard, and the other nights he wouldn't do anything. So that's kind of was just his rep.
Okay, I mean, is this from shows you saw or just...
Shows, I can tell you one show I saw with, it was the Funks against Jumbo Shiruda and Yoshiaki Yatsu, and they were supposed to do a 30-minute draw. And Terry Funk was like all gung-ho. He wanted to do a great match. This was in 87 because kind of at the time it seemed his career was on the line because Baba was kind of unhappy with his performance. And he went in there and Jumbo says, it's cold. I'm not taking any bumps. I'm not going to the mat. And he wouldn't do a thing. And they had a stinker of a match. But yeah, that's one that I can remember right off the top of my head.
Okay, because I had someone actually put together a thing of the matches you saw live with Jumbo in them.
Uh-huh.
That's the only one that you actually said was bad.
That one was bad, yeah. But I mean, as far as like the guys that were on the tour, if you talk to any of the guys that were on the tour back in those days, I mean, that was, Jumbo's rep.
Okay, because, I also think that you have to remember that all the time would tape a lot of the shows back then, so I can't really think of that many nights where he would have...
No, they taped once a week. They taped once a week.
Pretty sure, because I have some tapes from, 87 where it's like, there were, 3 Ric Flair title matches from, the same block of TV.
Maybe, but, generally speaking, they were doing, one TV a week. That's not so unusual as far as now, too, as well. I mean, if you see that the matches now at the house shows, all of the older guys don't do anything at the house shows now because they have to, that you have to save yourself. Back then, there was a different attitude, but Jumbo was the guy who saved himself. We got Brandon in Baton Rouge. Brandon, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. I had a guess on your question here. Thinking it was Anton Giesink who won the gold medal in judo.
I want to say you're close, but Anton Giesink never wrestled for WWE. But he did. But in fact, he did. He wrestled for All Japan.
Okay, because I saw he had some matches with Gorilla and Bobby Duncan, and figured that may have been it.
He wrestled Gorilla in Japan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also was wondering how you think they're going to handle Cena versus Undertaker on SmackDown, because
Cena's got to figure out a way to get over because Undertaker's having surgery a couple days later.
Now, well, I have a sinking suspicion that the FBI is going to put Undertaker out and just completely screw Cena over going into the pay-per-view.
I think the FBI is getting involved myself. Unfortunately, yeah. So, yeah, I think that they're going to cost him somehow. Maybe even... God, I would hate to think that they'll injure him and it's a forfeit win. I would think, or maybe they'll injure him beforehand and then, you know, that'll be the excuse for Undertaker losing, or maybe they'll interfere and cost him the match in the ring. I don't know. But, yeah, I think it's going to be something along those lines, too.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Okay, very welcome. Let's go to Patrick in Kingston, Ontario. Patrick, what's going on?
Not much. How are you, Dave?
Doing really good.
I enjoyed WrestleMania last weekend. It was a great show.
Thought so, too.
I got an answer to your question for the other Olympic gold medalist.
Yes.
Could it be Terry Funk?
Terry Funk was never in the Olympics.
He was never in the Olympics?
Oh, God, no.
Oh, okay.
Not even close. I don't even know what sport he would have been in the Olympics.
I know. Then I was looking at other gold medalists who competed in the wrestling and looking at Robin Reed, but he was...
That was way before WWF period, though.
Yeah, but...
Robin Reed was an incredible wrestler, though.
Oh, I heard he was a very good wrestler.
Oh my God. I mean, like for Robin Reed was one of the. I mean, for his era, my God, that guy was incredible. Yeah.
Very incredible.
Yeah.
And also, I was wondering, what do you think of this Kevin Nash coming back? Do you think he'll be injured once again? Because I heard
Yeah, good chance.
he just might get injured himself again. But I think
that's just
other people are just saying like he'll get injured again, of course.
Well, he's 40, almost 44. He'll be 44 in a couple months, and he's had a lot of injuries. So yeah, I think he's injury prone, put it that way.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I mean, how many, when your knees are that bad, I mean, they just can go out really easily. And, you saw how easily he got hurt the last time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like, he did what Brock Lesnar did and got hurt. I mean, it's like he took a step and his thigh busted, basically.
I've got another question for you. What do you think of this old school, new school mix that they're mixing up lately with the Piper's Pit coming back, with Sable coming back, with Goldberg coming back, and mixing in with some of the new stars of the WWE and mixing it up on both SmackDown and Raw? What do you think of this new formula that they've really attached, old school versus new school?
I think that Roddy Piper for a few weeks to build up to one pay-per-view is not the worst idea in theory, although I'm skeptical it'll work out, although I think he'll help ratings a little bit for a couple of weeks. But again, if they are, like I said earlier, if they are on the show, Sable I can't give a good explanation for, but if they're on the show in a middle-of-the-card role, or even high middle of the card, but clearly not the focus of the show and clearly not the stars of the show, I'm all for it. But when they become and are promoted as the stars of the show, it puts the current guys that are on the road as the mid-card guys. That's not good for the future, and it's not good for the present.
No, it creates a big, huge problem for people like RVD, Kane, Jericho, but they've been already.
But they've all. The problem is that the mistakes with them have all been made, and it's going to be pretty hard to undo them. I mean, if we went back a year, maybe longer with Jericho, there's a lot that could have been done, but it wasn't done, and now it's pretty tough. But to bring a Piper back and think that they can fill that type of a role, that can't happen.
I think for the SmackDown brand, you've got better younger wrestlers because you've got Rhino, you've got Chris Benoit, you've got John Cena, Eddie Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero, and you've got also A-Train. Maybe A-Train's a little bit of a sticky issue with some of his wrestling because it's somewhat bland at times, but I predict that some of the younger guys on SmackDown will have a better chance of becoming a champion compared to what Raw has right now, because now they're all booking like Goldberg's going to win the title, for heaven's sake,
Well, we don't know that.
Well,
I mean, but I think that they have to do it. I think they just have to make a splash with the guy, and fast, because they've got to make a big star out of him.
Yeah, but do you think SmackDown has a better chance of getting younger people over than...
I mean, they have better guys because of the cruiserweights, but those guys are all, by being cruiserweights, are kind of limited to how far they're going to push them.
Oh, like the big, huge...
especially, with Vince taking control. So as far as, I don't know. I mean, to me, Lesnar and Cena are the two guys with the best shot, and I don't see anyone on Raw as far as new guys with that same kind of shot. But overall, I don't think it's hugely different. I mean, SmackDown has better workers, but both sides are lacking. You know, I mean, that's why the whole roster split has just watered down the lineup too much, I think.
Yeah. And I'm going to agree with you with the Cat being on Raw. That'd be a huge mistake. Like, with having Lawler and JR on it, that's one of the greatest teams, commenting teams that they've had since maybe early WCW ages. But I tell you,
but they've seen better days, though.
Yeah, they've seen better days. And
you know, I mean, I like Jerry Lawler, but he's not into it right now. I don't know what it is, but he's got he's a talented guy, but he's got to get more into it.
Yeah, I think Jerry Lawler's just losing his focus.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess he hasn't been the same since the divorce.
Yeah,
unfortunately. Anyway, we've got to get running. Okay, because we got a lot of calls to get to.
Just hold on a second. I'm just going to say that I'll probably listen to you tonight, if possible, on the Law.
Okay, thanks very much.
Have a nice day.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Let's go to Chris in Attleboro, Massachusetts. Chris, what's going on?
Nothing much. I had a guess on your trivia.
Yes.
Is it Jack Briscoe?
No, he never went to the Olympics, but he was a great wrestler.
Okay, I seem to recall that one coming up on a Yada some time back, and I think I was the one who won on it. So.
Yeah. Jack Briscoe was an NCAA champion, but he was never an Olympic gold medalist.
I had one other quick question. Is it time to maybe look at killing the brand extension? Maybe at some point?
I've been thinking that for a while now, but yeah, I think so.
I'm looking and there's really no credible contenders for Raw on Triple H. You know, Brock's got a couple guys, but him as a face, he doesn't really have a lot of options.
See, that's why I think the same thing, in that now at least you open up new matches of those guys that have been on each side. So I think that it's time to kill the brand extension. I thought that I was a big advocate of the brand extension when it happened, but after a couple of months I could see that it's not helping, especially when you look at those house show lineups and you're just limited to your programs. They've gone through Hunter's gone through Rob Van Dam, he's gone through Kane, he's gone through Booker T. You know what I mean? So now, there's new guys are on the other side, and and Brock, now Brock's with Cena, because he's gone through a lot of guys, and, at least, you could get Brock with some of the heels on Raw, and Triple H with, some of the babyface, and at least it's new matchups we haven't seen for, almost a year.
Yeah. Well, that was all I had. Thanks a lot.
Okay, very welcome.
All right, bye.
All right, bye. We're going to go to Todd in Poughkeepsie. I think Todd's going to win. Todd, what's happening?
Not much. How you doing, Dave?
Doing really good.
Yeah. Is it Willem Ruska?
It's Willem Ruska. You won. Right after this, make sure Ira gets your address and everything when we get you one of those things.
Excellent. I love it when you give questions that
you're going to know the answer to, yeah.
Yes, allowing me to use all the observers I have. I had one other quick question. That was my main reason for calling. On the pieces you wrote on WWF title, which were great, of course, one thing I was wondering was if you think that if Vince Sr. hadn't put the belt on Bob Backlund after the Graham year was over, and instead either kept it on Graham or went in another direction, how do you think that might have changed the future of the business?
I don't know. I mean, everything like that, probably would have some effect. I think that the title and the company was so strong, but you still needed a pretty larger-than-life type of guy in that role. Graham, I don't know. Graham was super, super charismatic, but he wasn't a great worker. I don't know how long. I don't think Graham could have lasted 6 years in that role, put it that way. I think that would have worn out. But maybe I'm wrong. Because we did have a lot of charisma. I don't know who else they would have, at that point, as far as a baby face that they would have considered. Let's just put it this way. Let's just throw in a name of a guy who was over. Ricky Steamboat. I think Ricky Steamboat would have been better than Bob Backlund in that same role, actually. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and if you think if they kept Graham in there for a while, when Hogan came along, do you think they would have taken some of the sizzle off of Hogan just because it was a similar?
Yes. If Graham would have been in there 4 more years doing the same gimmick, and then Hogan came along, people would just say he's a copy of Superstar Graham, and he would not have gotten over as big. But Hogan because of that size and everything, no one had that then. they just wouldn't have had him copy Graham, and they would have had him do something else. And I think he would have made it. He just had that physical charisma for that time that couldn't be denied.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Okay, very welcome, Todd. And we're going to go to Tom in Atlanta. Tom, what's going on?
Man, I had the answer.
You had the answer? You got to be kidding. You really? Seriously?
Because what happened was a couple months ago, the local radio station in town was offering free tickets if you could stump their wrestling experts. So I emailed Bryan, said, give me a couple of questions that nobody on earth could possibly answer, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
The other one was, what's Steve Austin's birth name?
Oh, it's not Steve Williams.
Right.
It's God, I forget what it is. Because yes, he took the name Steve Austin when he was like 5. I mean, Steve Williams when he was like 5.
Right, that's his father's name, but
right.
His birth certificate has another name.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I have that. I know I have it in Old Observers, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Well.
Yeah.
You want me to give you the answer?
Yeah, might as well. We're already on that subject.
It's Anderson.
That's right. That's right.
Anderson.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love the issue with the WWE title. I was wondering, once Backlund lost the title, he was no longer on the top of the bill anymore, right?
He had in some of the cities they kept him in main events for a couple of months, but they phased him out real fast after that. Yeah.
I mean, to your knowledge, were there any conversations because Vince Jr. at that time had owned the company, and did Vince say to him, "So look, we're basically phasing you out into mid-Carter status, and you'll never, be on the top again"?
No, actually, what happened was he phased him out to mid-Carter status without telling him anything, and then over the summer, after this all went down, he said, "Bob, we want you to bleach your hair, and we want to turn you heel." And Bob said no, and Vince said, "You're fired." And that was the end of Bob in WWE for many, many years. He actually ended up coming back, believe it or not, as a heel, kind of like Sable. Kind of like Sable now that we look back on history.
Yep. And consider doing a history of the women's title in the WWE. I think, that might be one issue.
What can I write about Moolah?
What?
What can I write about Moolah? I guess, actually, it was a whole lot of politics, when the...
Screw job with
Wendy Richter. Yeah, that was a big story. I'll write that on the... I'll talk about that in the when I do that whole period in WWF history.
Do you know what Richter's doing today?
No, I don't. I think she's living maybe in Florida. I haven't heard her name in a long, long time.
Right. Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, on the plane flight home because I was preparing my story, and I was like, God, Wendy Richter.
Yeah.
Because she was a pretty big deal there for a little while.
Right. And Morgan Fairchild does commercials for Old Navy, Dan.
That's right, Old Navy. Yeah, I know that. Brian doesn't watch TV. Anyway, we got to get out of here, okay?
Right.
Okay, thanks so much, Tom. We'll see you next week.